This is the 8-9 Combo.
This is the 8-9 Combo. I'm Brett McKay. This, in a park somewhere in the US, is Harry Jones. Hello, mate. How are you doing?
Hello, Brett. How does it feel? Yes, I'm on the shores of the muddy Trinity River, overlooking a pristine golf course. There's a beer garden behind me. There's assorted runners and dog poo everywhere, and I'm glad to be on. How does it feel to be a consequential 5-figure podcast?
Let's get straight to that. We have got a really interesting chat coming up, but we need to tell people, the nice people, that we have hit 10,000 YouTube subscribers, which is...
Geez, that's bright. It hurts my eyes.
It's very bright. It's very bright. It's quite unbelievable. We can only say thank you, but we also, mate, need to tell them why we want more people to subscribe to us.
Well, I think going back to back, repeating, winning a game, which is the theme of this podcast probably at some level, is the hardest thing in sport. And so we don't want you to shy away from getting that 20,000. We are raising our sights now. We want to go back-to-back 10,000s. We're not content. We're not going to sit on our laurels. We're not lazy. We're going to dig deep. We want to run over broken glass and shove our face through nails in wood to win. I want the blood of the saints to rise from the dead and exhort you.
Yeah.
Do the right thing. Stop wanking and subscribe.
It is absolutely mind-blowing, and we thank you all for doing it. If you haven't subscribed yet, then just hit the little red button down there if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're on Spotify or any of the pods platforms, hit subscribe, hit like, hit follow, whatever it happens to be, and join this crazy little thing that we do. Here's cheers, mate. Apart from the fact that we've hit a massive milestone, what are we giving cheers to around the rugby world this weekend?
The sound of scrums. A lot of times scrums are met with silence, indifference, ho-hum. Oh, how long will this take? At Twickenham in London, where I was sat next to Hugh Griffin and next to Tim Cocker and those fellas, it was amazing. We couldn't even hear each other speak when scrums were announced. And this was a slow building phenomenon in the Springboks versus Pumas game, where each scrum seemed to be mightier than the one before. And at some point it was almost like, can you top that? Can I scrum my head through your actual collarbone and emerge through your deltoid? Can I come out through your scapula? And at some point we were sort of having bets on when there would be a penalty try and a card. Argentina was kind of lucky in the sense that the referee was probably not too keen on that being the narrative of the so-called final of the Rugby Championship. But just the swell of the roar just with the announcement of a scrum, I thought that was really cool and a total rugby rush.
Yeah. That's a good shout. That is a good shout. Argentina, where there's a classic case of you guys are in real trouble here, but because a try has been scored, I've kind of forgotten about that.
Well, they had a young guy, to be fair. Also, they had a young prop who was 19, 20. He came on and he reversed the whip. So maybe finally the Pumas in the final 10 minutes of the championship found a prop.
Yeah. I'm just going back to James Slipper, mate. What a unbelievable career. Like, it's just you realize there was post-match presentation for him there on Saturday night in Perth, and Nathan Sharp presented him with a framed jersey. And Nathan Sharp played in James Slipper's first test in Perth. And Nathan Sharp had a long career himself, played for 10 or 11 years, never played a Lions series. But straight away there, you look at those two guys and you realise that's a 25-year span of Australian rugby. Max Jorgensen was 5 when James Slipper debuted. And he's just such a workhorse, such a humble guy. He's beloved. Like the reaction for him universally in the rugby world this week and last week after he announced his retirement has just been fantastic. And so we just wish him, friend of the pod, all the best in the next stage. We'll have to get him back for a chat at some point.
I've seen pictures of him when he was younger, and he was a little bit more of a obvious muscle man. But what's cool about this whole story for me is how normal sized and normal looking James Slipper is. So a lot of the other big test cap winners, you look at them and you go, okay, Alan Wynne-Jones, hello, Ibn Etzebeth, how are you? Or they look like speed. Just James Slipper is every man. I love it. I love that he was able, with that body, he was never just smashing people and getting them out of the way. He had to toil. He had to get down
and
deep.
He was so close to scoring a try in his last test too. I was absolutely certain he got over. I reacted. I thought he was over, and he was just short.
Give it to him, ref. Come on.
Well played, Slips. Well played. We have got a great chat coming up very shortly. Let's get into that. I'm about to go on a family holiday and I'm mentally already at the airport. So I've decided the easiest option for me, the best use of my time, is just to recycle an intro. So here we go. This week's guest is part of the international rugby chat group of mystery that brought Harry and I together more than a decade ago and has seen both of us in person, but not together. He's the author of a couple of fantastic books, one about the last year of the Melbourne Rebels and his crime thriller, When the Deep Dark Bush Swallows You Whole, and the must-read weekly column, The Wrap, on the Royal website in Australia. Geoff Parkes, welcome back, and welcome back to the intro that I read out about 3 months ago for you.
Terrific, thanks. And, the way the world is these days, we're all into recycling. So
Indeed.
It's a terrific effort on your part, Brett.
It was literally the least I could do, mate. It's been a great rugby championship. That's the crux of it. It's run and won. Results last weekend, I think, went probably the way we were probably expected in the rugby world. Obviously, Wallabies fans will be disappointed by the Bledisloe 2 result. Lost Pumas made a hell of an effort in coming back. That left the final standings, 4 wins for South Africa and New Zealand, two for Australia and Argentina. But I think the awkward lingering undercurrent through this last block of games for the Rugby Championship was that the last one ever?
Well, it may be. And it's a hard question for us to answer because I don't think the people responsible for deciding that sort of thing, I don't think they know.
No.
And, so we've got this unusual situation where, there's 4 nations involved. They're sort of happy. They're not happy. We're going to do our own thing. And, Australia was sort of left holding the baby there while South Africa and New Zealand decide they're going to resurrect their tours. And that's a good thing, right? Ask any South African rugby fan, any All Black rugby fan. They want, it's the great rivalry. We want to see more of it. Let's go and do proper tours again. But is that sustainable year after year? You'd have to question that. And are they going to get bored with that after a couple of years, or is there room to have a rugby championship anyway? And then you've got stuff like the Nations Cup, the global stuff coming in. Nobody knows how that's going to pan out. So there's just this, Rugby 360, there's just this big state of confusion. And it's fair to say our administrators are just reacting to stuff rather than, it all seems so experimental and short term. And whereas really as fans, I think fans want certainty, that's why the Six Nations works so well, because it's just rock solid in the schedule every year.
Yeah.
And we've been incapable of doing that. And I think it's sad. And the other sad thing, just to finish the point, imagine if they'd acted after the 2015 World Cup when Japan beat South Africa at Brighton, or even in 2019 when Japan beat both Ireland and Scotland. We all know how good Fiji is when they're allowed to have their players and do a proper preparation. This should have been a mirror of the Six Nations, and it should have been that way for a long time now. And our own administrators, it's a big failure. And that we're at this point now where we're just, okay, we're going to do this next year, try something new. We don't know what's going to happen the year after. And I just think that's a real shame.
It's quite weird, Harry. I think that we've now, the Rugby Championship for 2025 is concluded. Through the course of the tournament, we've heard both that there will be no Rugby Championship next year and that there'll be a truncated Rugby Championship next year. And now we've got to the end of the tournament and there has been not a word of what 2026 looks like. It is a massive failing of our administrators.
So the reason why we are even talking about this is because it might be the lost Rugby Championship. And we know that it might be the final one because important people have wondered publicly whether it will be. And we obviously have to listen to them. Rassie Erasmus being notable, saying one of the prime drivers of their message board and their storyboarding was, don't you want to be the one in Wikipedia, 10 years later? The trivia question that Geoff Parkes is winning at his bar in Melbourne is, who won the final Rugby Championship? And so there was that. It was shunted aside all too easily for next year. And the minute you have a restaurant, even if it's quite popular in your neighborhood, but it suddenly just goes shut for a month, it is absolutely lethal for that restaurant.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't go yourself or you went one time, you just sort of relegate that thing. And it was obvious that this rivalry was far more important than the Rugby Championship, because even to the extent that the Rugby Championship was a thing, it was because of the rivalries inside it that were like the Six Nations, like Geoff alludes to, well-seasoned, organic, and held interest for each other. So we are always fascinated with All Blacks, and All Blacks are always looking at the Springboks, even internally, domestically, in a way that Argentina and Australia don't, about us and about each other. And so this is the problem of fabricating things. I think what's also interesting is why it took so long for us to get to this year. This year was good, but why did it take so long? So there we have the problem of, in the Six Nations, the bad team, Italy, is only 1/6 of the competition. When Argentina is 25% of it, it does weigh us down long. When they started to sort of win, obviously spice it up. But I don't even think the rivalry between Argentina and Australia, for example, has any root in history, or I don't know. It just doesn't even feel like a thing.
It's been so spasmodic up until their admission to the Sanzar partnership. Australia and Argentina,
but not just rugby,
each other very much.
Not just rugby, but so Scotland and Ireland have a rivalry that could extend beyond rugby. England and France famously have one of those. So that's the thing between New Zealand and Australia. There's a built-in forever rivalry, big brother, little brother, whatever you want to talk about. So I think that's also part of the issue, Geoff, is like they wanted something to happen, and you're probably right. They either had to grow through the awkward phase quicker or not add Argentina at all, because the Tri-Nations was plenty fun.
Yeah, and look, they did add Argentina, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. But it's almost like they lost their bottle when it came to Japan. And I got a sense that it was like, well, okay, they've beaten South Africa, that's not enough. And then the next World Cup, well, okay, they've beaten Ireland and Scotland. If we just hang on for a couple more years, they'll fall away again, and we won't have to do anything about it. And, whereas a bolder administration would have said, we need to do something about this and make it happen. To your point, Harry, about, that rivalry or lack of rivalry between Australia and Argentina, I think that's more an Australian thing with anybody that isn't New Zealand or England. And, so when we've looked at the history of Super Rugby, and people start criticising it, the first thing that happens in Australia is, well, I don't want to get up in the middle of the night and watch a game from South Africa or wherever. And I've had people tell me that about Argentina, and yet the time zones for the Argentinian games are brilliant. You know, it's
exactly
breakfast rugby's fantastic.
It's breakfast rugby on a Sunday, yet people just, for some reason, Australian sport, the strength of Australian sport is so domestic that, you know, a lot of fans here, not all of them, of course, but many fans here struggle with that international aspect apart from, you know, playing England and playing New Zealand.
Yeah, it's actually so ingrained, Geoff, that there would be East Coast sport fans of any sport who struggle or forget or become inconvenienced by their team having to play in Perth when it's 3 hours behind.
Well, there you go.
That's an absolute fact.
And there's also geographical realities, obviously, in that the Tri-Nations, a team like, you know, my box had to always sort of, there's always a disparity there. And then when you add Argentina, because Argentina is not very close to South Africa, it didn't really solve the problem. In some cases, it exacerbated it depending on where you were flying from. And so it became a forever travel tournament. And adding Japan or Fiji would have only added to that. So there was always that problem in the back rooms people talked about. The other thing, what is, Geoff, to your point, the Wallabies and the Springboks mathematically have a wonderful rivalry, but you would never know it from the lack of spice or the or the boringness of the banter, which often goes down into referee decisions instead of the really cool stuff, you know, that you get between the Boks and the All Blacks, or the Wallabies and the All Blacks. And I just almost think that the Rugby Championship became a series of rivalries with New Zealand. And it's like, we all had our independent, you know, Argentina wanted to beat New Zealand. That was the Holy Grail. We always wanted to just play New Zealand all the time. And you guys are in this sort of death spiral match Bledisloe thing that you do. And so I don't know. It had the ingredients of tragedy, but the comedy is that this year it was brilliant. It's like these plans between the All Blacks and Springboks would have been going on, Geoff, for years. So it's just that it happened like, oh wow, this tournament was badass, beautiful. Yeah.
And that's the great shame of it. Yeah, we've had one, like, certainly last year we were talking about, you know, was this the best ever? I don't think there's any doubt that 2025 has eclipsed that. So we've had probably the two best editions of the Rugby Championships in the last two seasons. And come 2026, that may or may not be a thing. I mean, there's even talk about, you know, the Wallabies will still play South Africa next year. There'll still be Bledisloe Cups. So they're still going to play the games potentially, yet it may not be in the guise of the Rugby Championship. So not even that makes sense to me.
No, well,
so if you're going to play the games, but you can't call it the Rugby Championship, what on earth are we doing?
Yeah, well, really, because, you know, they've been left out. South Africa and New Zealand obviously organised their tour. And so they're sitting around and they've got to play games, right? They need revenue, they need home games, the players need games. So who else are they going to play? Of course they're going to look to Argentina and South Africa. But as you say, then all the context is gone. And what are we doing?
Yeah, and the other shoe that's dropping now is the French are mighty interested in anything that smacks of elitism. And so now they're thinking the greatest rivalry. They want to have their own Le Grand Rivalry as well. So, I think you could see these ad hoc weird tours. By the way, there's a lot of precedents for that. The French tour South Africa many, many times. They've played a lot of times in South Africa. It's only been in the recent times that they haven't traveled down in the July series and brought a real team. They used to do that. So I think they smell a money grab as well. I don't know. I think you could actually chalk this up not so much to Rugby Championship and their lack of boldness and intelligence, because when has that ever happened? I think World Rugby, by stuffing around for so long on calendaring, in a way, it's inevitable because private equity and joint venture partners, they're sitting around a table. They don't know anything about rugby. And they just say, hello, All Black NZR, you guys. What commercial assets do you have? And they say, well, we have this incredible rivalry with the Springboks. Well, why don't you just keep playing those fuckers? Yeah. Oh, okay. Let's do that. Why are we playing Argentina?
there's an awful irony that at the time where we might actually be moving towards something that supposedly addresses the global calendar thing with this Nations Championship.
Exactly.
That everyone is kind of working against it and doing their own thing anyway. Like, this is just classic rugby administration.
Yeah, because I don't think people really believe it, right? I don't think that.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
You're spot on.
They've been talking about a global calendar for years, but nobody trusts the French, nobody trusts the clubs, and it's just not going to happen. And so let's get on with arranging our own little calendars around the side of it. And no, it is just a mess. And don't get me started on player welfare. I noticed World Rugby came out swinging against Rugby 360. One of their criticisms was that Rugby 360 doesn't pay any due care to player welfare. And here's World Rugby, the solution to a global calendar that is way too crowded. Their solution is to drop a new competition into that. And where do they get off criticising people about player welfare? It's let me illustrate another way. I had lunch with a Wallabies player this week, a couple of days ago. He's got a week off following the match in Perth, about to go on tour, and he's been up all year training, playing, more training, holding tackle bags, the odd game. Now he's going on a northern tour, Japan, UK. When you get back, it's early December, and he's got a report in at Super Rugby training, at the end of Christmas and start of the new year. And is that sufficient for players to rest maybe their body a little bit, but not their mind? And any global calendar that says a player is engaged with their club or their country for 11 months out of 12, that is a nonsense. And it is not doing.
So where did you and Lukan Salakaya Lotto eat, Geoff?
That was where did you buy lunch, or did Carter Gordon buy lunch?
It was neither of those two, although it could have been, because they're both great blokes, and I would happily buy them lunch. But no, it was another player from the Wallabies. Yeah.
Righto. It's certainly
he wasn't complaining, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm the one doing the complaining on his.
No, I mean, there's replete of examples. Like right now, Sasha Feinberg, Ngoma Zulu, Damian Willemse, and Kubas Reinach are joining the Stormers on their URC tour and slotting right into that. And obviously, there's exigencies in club matches. You need your guys in. There could be an injury here or there. And it's a forever season. It's a forever thing with G-forces that none of us encounter in our daily work. And like you say, the mental grind of going through what the Boks just went through, or the All Blacks or the Wallabies, and then slotting into this other story. I think it's insane. And I'm happy to see Conrad Smith just push across a few things that were much more pragmatic, like setting actual top line,
actual
maximums, and getting into minutes and getting into training minutes, which I know Geoff has been looking into closely in his work in the concussion field, of the cumulative effect of contact training that doesn't really need to be done in some cases, where you're really just wearing someone out for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
But guys, I posed the question of, if it is true that we just saw the lost Rugby Championship, what will we recall about it when we are old and gray and thinking about this odd thing that happened for 12 times with all four in?
It's a really interesting question, because I think my thoughts right now are that it'll be remembered as a tournament that finally reached its heights and then was just abandoned.
Yeah.
I can't sort of word it any other way. It's going to be a weird recollection, is what it's going to be.
Yeah, and you put your finger on it before, Harry. about the rivalries within the competition. So are there fans walking around in New Zealand, puffing their chests out saying, well, we won the most rugby championships? Or people walking around in South Africa saying, well, we've won the last two, therefore, we're the greatest rugby nation ever. I just don't think that's the case at all. And, people are walking around thinking more about the individual matches against South Africa and New Zealand, or Australia, Argentina, some of the individual events, but they're not thinking about framing it in the sense that the Rugby Championship is a valuable title. Whereas in the UK, clearly that's different when it comes to the Six Nations.
Yeah. For me, I think it's at its best, when it operated at its best, it was viewed as the innovative rugby laboratory. And when New Zealand was the most innovative nation, it was in it, and it was always being caught or chased by these three wild dogs. And then now that the Springboks have taken over that sort of mantle of, now we're doing the strange, weird things, then they're trying to get run down. So I suppose that in that sense, it was pretty cool, and often furnished the finalists of a World Cup and semi-finalists, even sometimes, maybe even
sometimes,
4 or 4. I don't know, maybe
all 4 semi-finalists. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that there's that. I think it would be. Yeah, I think you'd have some regrets around it and say what might have been.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Remind me when it first went from the Tri Nations to the Rugby Championship. The Tri Nations, I'm pretty sure everyone played each other 3 times. When the Rugby Championship started, did it immediately drop back to 2 games against each opponent, or was it still 3 for a bit there?
I can't remember 3.
I don't know. So there you go. This is the problem.
There you go.
Because Six Nations guys, they know everything. They always know exactly when bonus points came in, and they're just obsessive. I was in Murrayfield for the Boks versus Scotland, and there was at least 20,000 people there early. I know some of them were there to drink 2 hours early, but a lot of them were watching in a muddy field on a big screen, Wales versus Italy, and they were into it.
Yeah,
they were really into it. So yeah, I just think there's something there that they built that's enviable. But let's press on to our next question.
Yes.
Since we've worn that one out.
We have. I think we have. So what you've posed here is who, a player or coach from each of the 4 teams whose performance through the Rugby Championship exceeded expectations. So you want us to name 4 names, 1 from each country.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, I guess we could take each team at a time and then go around the circle.
Okay.
So
well, lead us off.
Okay,
then.
Let's start with the Wallabies.
Okay.
I wrestled here between Mike Cron and Nick Frost over and over and over. And I suppose this question depends on your expectations. And I didn't have high expectations of Nick Frost, but I did of Mike Cron. So I'm going to go with Nick Frost. He was exceptional on the line-out, not just on his own ball, but on others' ball. He was a menace. He changed a lot of throws, and he made all the hookers in the other 3 teams exceptionally nervous.
Yeah.
And carried well.
That's a good shout.
So I'm similar. I had Mike Cron written down, but I had expectations that he would make a difference. So I've given that prize to actually the front row unit, because it's one thing having Cron.
That's good.
But I think the front row for Australia really stood up the whole series. And there's, even with some personnel changes, now clearly they're in tune with their coach, but they've still got to go out there and do it. And I think full credit, the old guys, Slipper, even Alatar coming back last week, the younger guys, Tupou, much maligned, they've all stood up when it's come to the scrum.
Good one.
Yeah, that's a good shout. So I thought about Nick Frost, and then I thought, no, he had a really good line series. So I just thought he'd follow on. I've actually landed with Billy Pollard in the end, because he
was on my list too.
yeah. And he, early on the year, so the Wallabies started 3 different hookers through the line series. Pollard played the 3rd test in Sydney, started the 3rd test in Sydney. And he's just got better and better and better ever since now, to the point where the rotation around hooker for the Wallabies now is on the bench. And, Matt Fessler is not even come back into the squad. He's been fit playing for Queensland in Super Rugby Oz. He might not even necessarily make the Wallabies squad for the spring tour to start with. He might actually come through the Australia A game in Japan. So Pollard has just got his game to a level where he is rock solid around the field. His scrummaging is really good within that front row unit that you mentioned, Geoff. His only downside is his line-out throwing, and that fell away to the end of the Rugby Championship. As it, unfortunately, he had a few off days through Super Rugby as well. So that's not a new thing for him. But I've been really impressed with the way his all-round game has absolutely become international standard through this tournament.
Good shout.
So Argentina, we'll go Box, Argentina. Which way do you want to go?
Let's go Box, because I got
Box.
one loaded up, I think, pretty well. If it's players, it would have been Ruan Nortia, but I'm actually going to go with Tony Brown. Tony Brown identified kick space and the lack thereof in the Box kicking attack as the real hole. It wasn't so much about ornate patterns of attack. Yes, he wanted forwards on who had good hands, so offloads went sky high. 48 offloads for the Box. In years past, 14. 25. That is a incredible addition to go to 48 offloads. Yeah. And line breaks went down year on year, but tries went up. 27, the most ever scored in the Rugby Championship. So I look at Tony Brown and see that not only was there fewer penalties on attack, fewer rucks built, quicker scoring, which required you to have fewer rucks, which then led to the lowest penalty count in ages and the lowest penalty count of the 4 teams. But it generated such quick attack that you could put teams away or at least make them really ragged. The defense wasn't better. So I look at attack and kudos Tony Brown for identifying quadrants on the field where you kick to, sliding kicks, diagonal kicks, running kicks, 40 kicks to put away the All Blacks, 32, 36 to put away Argentina. Tony Brown, when he's in practice, and I've seen him now, he's a kicking genius. And he's taught those guys, Willemse, Sasha, Lebok, even Pollard, to find different kicks.
It's a good shout, Geoff, because when you look at the stats across the board, tries scored, clean breaks, offloads and all that amongst the other 3 teams are actually very, very similar. Carries, number of passes, it's all really similar. But there's these little spikes of offshoot that is South Africa's taking their game to a different level. So that's a good one. I've actually gone with Libok in this because I think through this tournament Pollard was back in. There's obviously a lot of hype around Sasha Feinberg and Mgumuzulu. And there was a danger, I think, that Libok could become to use an infamous term, a forgotten man in the threesome. And he just showed snippets and performances when he was off the bench, when he started games, that he's very much on par. And there's very much a 3-way rotation there at 10 for the Box now. So he was really, really good. Still has his moment of madness. And I still think about that pass that he threw that Joseph Suali'i didn't so much intercept as just stood still and caught.
Yeah.
But he's becoming a very, very valuable player in that rotation, I think.
I'll give you a really quick story because it ties into our friends at Rhino Rugby. I asked Andre Pollard, Sasha, and Mani back-to-back at Captain's Run what they think about the ball. And the story is not about the ball so much as their personalities. Andre gave me a recitation of the radius and diameter of each dimple and how it deadens the ball.
Of course he did.
Sasha didn't like that it took away 7 meters of his distance because he likes to kick from 65, not just 58. And Mani said, "Inbal in Afrikaans. A ball is a ball is a ball." So that's a great window to Mani. He's not really tortured by the misses. He just doesn't care. He's there to play rugby and have a jolt, Yeah.
Fair. Who have you got, Geoff?
So my guy is Jasper Visa. and
yeah,
and not because it's a surprise that he's played well or anything like that. We all know he's a good player, but I just felt that he took his game to another level this series. He's always impressed me as a bloke who he gets sent out there and he's a bit of a human threshing machine and, cause a bit of havoc and all that sort of stuff. But I just felt this in these last few games, he's really felt like more assertive player, like he belongs and he knows his spot in the team. And his work rate's outstanding. His post-contact meters are outstanding. I just felt that he's a guy in that team whose stocks have gone up. He's just made himself a little bit more indispensable.
You have that thing in the NBA and many sports. We have a most valuable player, and they always sort of say, "Where would you be without him?" And with the Visa, you have a really clear, he really did change things in those 3 games. It was night and day on gain line. And by the way, you're right. He's tackling. He's a murder weapon. I mean, this guy he accelerates into contact whether he's tackling you or running over you. And it's live. It's very weird to watch because most players slow down a little bit. Jasper is let's go.
Let's go. I think it didn't become apparent what the box didn't have without him until he came back.
Yeah.
And then it's something, that's what we've been missing. Yeah. Argentina. I've thrown up Thomas Albanese because I didn't know what to expect with him. And I sort of thought, are they just giving another young guy a go? But then you watched his game, particularly his first 2 games against New Zealand. And I was like, Santiago Carreras may never play 10 again. Like it was just a completely different player and looks really good, looks really assured, doesn't look flighty, kicks well, passes well, just looks like a really good, solid player. And I mean, that's really not a surprise when you think about the good, solid 10s that Argentina have had for 25 years, probably. So just looks really assured, I think.
I'm going to expand on that, Brett. For me, we live in Australia. Rugby chat in Australia is dominated by, who's our next 10, right? It's every week, all the time, who's our 10? So you've singled out.
I just realised I picked 2 10s out of 4 players.
It's the Aussie in you.
Yes.
Albanese. So for me, with Argentina, it's Carreras, it's Albanese, and we saw on the weekend Prisciantelli played 10, and I thought he did a fantastic job. So they are oozing talent there. They're also oozing talent at 9. Garcia has been a real revelation. Benitez Cruz played well on the weekend as well. So I'm lumping my answer for Argentina into that halves, the 9-10, and I think Argentina have got some issues to fix, no doubt, and obviously starting with the scrum. But I think they've got the best set of halves in all of the top tier of rugby.
I have such high expectations of all the Pumas that I can think of that played well, so it was difficult. And so I'm going with Gonzalo Garcia, mostly because I didn't really have much knowledge of him. And so he's the one that stood out for me. The quality of his work from the base, the spiral, the vision. When they had a midfield ruck and they were 2-sided attack, they were always trouble. And I felt like they really did, even though I think Benitez did play well, I feel like they really missed him in the coming down the stretch.
How were you impressed in the end with Carlos Alcaraz?
It's just the names, not the look. It's not like Montoya and Slipper. Although I do want to see now a young picture of Montoya. Did they always look alike, or did they grow into each other? That's interesting.
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. So that leaves us with New Zealand. Harry, who are you saying?
I'm going with Quintupaya because I thought he came back from a very long gap, and you always wonder about people who had that horrific an injury and what will they do in a position that requires incredible collisions. And I just thought he was an absolute horse down the stretch. I thought a lot of things that happened that were good, finished by other people, were started by Quinn, and that's both sides. I know Geoff hates this, both sides of the ball, but he showed up, and got to meet him in person, and he's an interesting guy because he doesn't look like much when he walks in street clothes, but man, the man is just cut. He's chiseled out of granite, and boy, he doesn't stand back for anyone. And by the way, the Rugby Championship, when you look at 12s and 13s, it's by far the best in the world. It's unbelievable who you're running up against.
I was going to say about Argentina before.
Chocobatis, Cinti, Jesse Creel, Damien De Allende. And, when you're 13, you don't get to choose which one you tackle, right? So you're tackling all these guys and going against all these guys. And I just thought, if you can show up like Quinn Tupaia did against this crew, you're something.
Yeah. One of my New Zealand colleagues for Rugby Pass has just in the last 24 hours, I think, written an article entitled "Have the All Blacks Stumbled Across the Next Centre Point Combination?" And it's that sort of question to contemplate. Have we fallen into something great here? Barrett and Tupaia look very, very good as a combination.
Yeah, so I'm in that neighbourhood. I've actually picked Barrett, and again, it's a bit weird.
Which one?
He's already a leading player.
We know it's Geordie this championship.
Geordie. But he went across to Leinster. I think he had a really good attitude over there, right? He wasn't on holiday. It wasn't, he wasn't there to muck around. I think he gave them good value. He's wanted to improve himself as a player. He's come back this series and he's been really consistent. It's almost to me like he's gone up a level in terms of his seniority. They put him back at Eden Park a couple of weeks ago, put him back to cover the high balls where they've been struggling so much. He made a bird of that. He made the break at the end of the game, which tidied the game up and won it for New Zealand. And again on Saturday night in Perth, I thought he was excellent. And to your point about him and Tupaia together, I think that looked really impressive. So he's the guy for me. I must admit, I did struggle with New Zealand. There's not many guys in there that finished the Rugby Championships with higher stocks than what they started. I think there's still a lot of guys where the jury's out.
Yeah, that's probably fair. The point about Geordie Barrett was the first split as though where Bowden went down early and Mackenzie came on, but actually ended up playing a lot of second receiver because it was Geordie standing at 10. And he was directing the team around the pass. I was like, okay, is that a glimpse of the future? Yeah. I'm going to throw up Simon Parker because I had no real expectations about him. In fact, I even had the thought, some players get a call up to test rugby, and you think, I don't know if they're going to be able to make the step. And Corey Toole's another one. I just think what you do at Super Rugby level is really, really strong. Is that going to equate to test rugby? And Parker just got in, made his tackles, made his runs, played basically really solid 7.5 out of 10 games every week, and was sort of largely forgettable. And I don't actually say that in a bad way. He just did his job so unassumingly that all the conversation was about other players and other players around him. Yet he was sort of the linchpin across that on the side of the scrum there.
Yeah, I just want to see Parker get more of the ball.
Yeah, and that's all fair. That's all
hard-bone guy. He did get a fair bit of the ball for the Chiefs this year, and their loose forward trio was great. But look, it's early days. He's finding his way in Test rugby. He's certainly a very good defender. But if he's to cement that place, he does need to get more of the ball and do fair. More. There was too much went on Satiti in the games before, and he's got to run more with it.
Yeah, that's fair. Not unfair at
So,
all.
what's
the next? You've said us 2 homework tasks leading to this.
Yeah, let's streamline this final one though. But it's the same thing, which is every team had a dog shit game.
Yeah.
Every team had a bad loss. Maybe less Australia than the others actually, but they had accumulation, I guess. But Argentina definitely had a dog shit game. Springboks definitely had one at Ellis Park, and the Wellington fiasco is still being felt inside New Zealand. You can just almost feel it. Them thinking about it. What was the shape for each team or the scheme that when it went all horribly wrong seemed to be the issue? For each team, what is the shape they got to stay away from or game plan? And why don't you start us, Geoff, and maybe take us through whichever order you want to?
Well, I think Argentina's probably the obvious one to start off with, and there are 2 things for them. I think they got ahead early in both the games against Australia and didn't handle that very well, and they got run over once and only just held on the second time. So I think they need to do more about their composure and to keep playing. They sort of froze a bit. Obviously,
exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, from the weekend, the scrum's a huge issue for them. You mentioned young Thomas Rapetti when he came on and seemed to make a difference. I'm really looking forward to Argentina playing England next, and as the players mingle after the game and share a beer, young Thomas and Finn Baxter will be off to the side playing with their Lego. That'll be a nice touch.
Well played.
Now,
very good.
Moving on, the All Blacks. Look, obviously they fell apart in that second half in Wellington. If we're talking about shape, I think the issue with the All Blacks is that under Scott Robertson, I'm still not sure they've found their identity. What is their shape?
That's a great shout.
Identity? And it's almost like it's just a continuation of what it was before, but without any certainty. And are they a side that wants to move the ball and outskill opponents and run them off their feet like they did for so many years? And then when that turns to shit, when they get knocked over by Argentina, and so then the next game they go back to, right, we've got to harden up and muscle up in the forwards. And I did think, the game being at Perth on Saturday night, it was really flat in the second half, and it just wasn't a great experience for the crowd. They were a bit wet. The game wasn't thrilling. There was too many penalties, but a little bit perversely, I actually felt better about the All Blacks than that, because they sucked the life out of the game, and at least they played some field position and they looked like they had an idea about what they were doing. And I don't think that's been the case through Scott Robertson's reign. So that's what I'm looking for them to do. South Africa, they're clearly in transition. So we're going to get these periods where it's a bit messy. I used the word clunky a couple of weeks ago in an article. But when it comes together, as it did in Wellington, it's fantastic. And I think everybody is excited about where Tony Brown and Rassie and those young players are taking this team. So they've certainly found an identity. They're not there yet, but it's a hell of a ride to where they're going. And then the Wallabies, look, I think they looked their best when they got continuity and confidence into their ball movement. We saw that at the start of the game in Perth. We saw that in the second half in South Africa when they overran the box. And really the only thing that's hampering that is their own ill discipline, because then they start giving away penalties, they lose field position, and then they start being reactive. So they are much better when they are taking the ball on the front foot and setting the tone for the game. And they did that for long periods against the Lions too. So they need to find a way to do that more. And the way to do that is not give cheap possession away or score a great try and have it turned over and the guy put in the bin. They just got to get that shit out of their game.
Yeah. That's really good. I've sort of come at it from the other angle, Harry, like, the opposite of when teams look their worst. So when they did look their best, and I agree with Geoff about the Wallabies. The second half, in Joburg, most of the game in Cape Town, despite the result not going their way, and then Townsville, particularly the last hour in Townsville, was they had all that continuity, they had all that momentum, they knew what they were doing with the ball, they played well, they were playing with confidence. They used the scoreboard to their advantage in all three games, and again, despite the result in Cape Town not going their way. So that's the moments, the feeling in those three games is what they need to be getting back to on this spring tour. That's when they've played their best rugby this year. Argentina will say they played their best rugby in Australia. I'm quite sure they were very, very good at home against New Zealand, but I think they played their best rugby in Australia. You're right, though, Geoff. They certainly then inexplicably stopped playing, and that was ultimately what their downfall was in Townsville. They rectified that the following week in Sydney and actually closed it out pretty well. South Africa will go, we just need to drink whatever we drank at halftime in Wellington and have that for the rest of our lives, because they,
and in Durban.
they were a different team. From halftime in Wellington, they were a different team from the rest of the tournament.
Yeah.
And they were ruthless. It was like the Eden Park loss forced Rassie to go, I wasn't going to do this for another 9 months, but let's pull out this folder here and let's start doing some of this now. And they played differently. They selected differently. There was different shape about them, their attack. Defending differently even. They're not all out blitz now. I think there's a different look and feel about their defense now as well. So their evolution is well in place. And then for New Zealand, the way they were able to close out the two Bledisloe tests was super, super impressive. And I've said spoke to Marty Devlin this week, and I just said, the ability to the ability to just dominate possession in the last 10 minutes of games. In both those Bledisloe tests, the Wallabies got back to within arm's reach. And in both games, the All Blacks just dominated the final 10 minutes of possession, like to the point where in Perth, I think the Wallabies had 5% of possession in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
No one's going to win rugby like that.
Yeah, so the way I saw it was New Zealand is not really looking like they believe they're number one team in the world. They're sort of being okay with 2-3, 1-2-3, 2-4. And part of that's because they're staid and conservative. To Geoff's point about why are they not doing more, their offload count was very low in this tournament. Their line break development was the lowest. So lowest offloads, lowest line breaks. When has that ever been true of the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship? And it's never. I checked it. They tackle too much. They get set on a tackle, and it's brave and it's cool, and it worked at Eden Park a couple times. But almost 1,000 tackles in a tournament compared to 600 for the Boks.
That's a lot.
It's a hard way to make a living. And I think Razor's sort of doing this old school, roll up your sleeves and show me your spirit. But it turns them into a set piece team where they're dependent on their set piece doing well. And every game in which their set piece failed, they lost.
That's a good point.
And that's a very strange place to be for the All Blacks. For Australia, I think obviously they're a hard to beat team. They can get sometimes in trouble, but they don't get overrun anymore. But I find that where they sometimes are still too stubborn.
They don't get overrun because they've never led a game all year.
Yeah, they're battling in there. But I think the penalty count, rose again, and then I just don't think they kick enough. And those things are linked, because if you keep playing in your own territory, you play differently, you defend differently, you start infringing, and then you get kicked to the corner or over the poles. And I just think if there was one thing that looked really good early on in the Joe Schmidt era that is now sort of I'm wondering is that wait, are we back to falling into rucks, just falling over and the wrong side, that kind of stuff, stupid stuff, like you're on attack. Argentina, obviously they don't score enough tries. We remember all the good tries, but they just don't score enough. And this championship, it doesn't let you do that. You cannot score 13 tries you 14, whatever it is, you got to score more than that. So maybe not so much highlights as learn to drive a more, play a little bit more proper rugby in the 22. I think for the Boks, it's really just what you said, which is adhering to the actual principles Tony's trying to teach. I did have a good chat with the guys at London, and their thinking was a bit different. Is that they were almost there at Ellis Park, like they almost stopped believing their ability to put it away, because at 22-0, 30 minutes in, there really wasn't a whole lot going on there. If they had continued to play Tony ball, they started playing another kind of ball, which was, like you said, throwing it to Suali. Brown loves the quick kick, the short kick, the diagonals. They just stopped kicking. And so that wasn't the plan. So I think, again, this is sort of like Argentina, attention wonder, whatever you call it. I don't find that's the case of the All Blacks this season. They actually stay with their game plan. It just doesn't look imaginative like the way I think of All Black rugby.
Yeah. It's interesting. Is it just me, or were there a lot fewer mauls this tournament from all teams?
I think that's empirically true. I wonder about why. Part of it was the lineouts were shambles, and you've got to have a pretty damn good lineout. And we've talked about this. I mean, Geoff's talked the great intel about Super Rugby and how that works. Boks lineout was pretty shaky. I thought the All Blacks got better.
Yeah. Well, the Wallabies became more shaky as the tournament went on. I think maul defense is a lot better now as well. Like it's hard to set maul now because defense is so much better.
That's part of it. New Zealand went to the maul a few times on Saturday night, and I think that was tied up to what I was saying about the way they wanted to approach the game. They had a lead. It was a wet night, so they just sort of reined that in. And I think it worked well, And do we see it enough? It's hard to know. One thing we do need to know, we know about the modern game, is that if you've got possession and you're in the scoring half, you have to do something with it. You've got to get points. And Harry, that's to your point about the Pumas. Because it's very hard to defend when the wheel turns and it's the other side's turn against you in the 22. It is hard to keep sides out now, and the way the game's, the shape of it and the way it's played. So, maybe unless sides are 5 meters out and they're obviously going from line out more there, we do tend to see sides run plays off the back of the line out, or someone coming around on a sweep round the back of a line out, rather than go up the guts with a maul. Because all you're doing then, if you don't get far, you're just setting up a static ball situation, and where you're better off playing when you've got some space off the line out.
That's true. Here's a little tidbit that we can probably wrap it up on. New Zealand in Perth on the weekend played of all their possession in the game, 74% of it, I think, was in the Australian half. Whereas of the Australian possession, the absolute majority of it, and it was 2/3 or 3/4, I can't remember what it was between the 22s.
So this is a reflection of not winning the kick contest
and not kicking enough yet.
Sometimes you have to kick to have it kick back to you. And the Wallabies are absolutely lethal, setting up a sort of kick return click attack where everyone's in their channels, and you'd want to have more of that. So you only get the kick back when you kick. So I know Australian fans hate kicking, but it's the quickest ball of all. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and look, there was people walking out of that stadium on Saturday night. Like I said, it was pretty flat, right? Because that territory was dominated by the All Blacks, and yet, you look at it from another point of view, and as a New Zealand fan, you'd have to be pretty happy with the way that they didn't just shovel it out and get hit behind the advantage line and all that silly stuff that they seem capable of doing every now and again. So in a lot of ways, it was a mature performance, but, it certainly wasn't a great spectacle.
Yeah, that's true. This has been really, really interesting, really analytical, even cathartic, I think, to sort of wrap up the tournament like this. So, Geoff, thanks so much for giving us some time this week and helping jump into the weeds with us. It's been interesting.
No, it's always a pleasure, guys, and particularly if this does turn out to be the last ever Rugby Championships, then this will be an historic episode of the 8-9 podcast that, that'll go into the annals and people will quote it, right? I was there, I listened to the final Rugby Championship podcast. And, that's something we can all hang our hats on.
Let's make a time capsule and close it up and see.
All right, I'm hearing that we need to recap this episode later in the year. Thanks, thanks, mate. Good chat.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This is the 8-9 combo with Brett McKay and Harry Jones, and mate, that was fantastic to wrap up the TRC with Geoff like that on the 8-9.
Yeah, I mean, we know Geoff very, very, very well. So we know that if you wanted to absolutely get silly or talk about music or just talk shit, there's no one better to spend a couple hours with in a pub. But also, he's a rugby man through and through. And so this substantive kind of chat is right up his alley.
Yeah, absolutely. No, really good. Really enjoyed that. And it will make for a good recap later in the year. So I've noted that one down already. We can sort of wrap through this last bit pretty quickly, mate. It's quarterfinal time in the NPC in New Zealand this weekend. Otago Waikato on Friday night. Bay of Plenty Tasman and Hawke's Bay Taranaki on Saturday. Canterbury Counties Manukau on Sunday. Saracens and Bath are the only unbeaten teams in the Premiership after 2 rounds. In the Irk, it's the Bulls, Stormers, Munster, Zebre are unbeaten in the Irk. So we might have to start thinking about games of the week again soon after our little break. Bayonne leads Stade Francais after 5 rounds of the top 14. I have to admit I have seen very, very little of all of those tournaments. So I'll start getting into that. New South Wales won Super Rugby Oz last weekend with a 80th minute pick and drive try to beat the Western Force in Perth. It was actually really, really good game in the final. It was a result in dispute right up until the very end. And well earned win for New South Wales. So good on them. Anything else you need to add?
It's very cool that the Stormers are so much better than Leinster. 35-0, and not right now.
Going on about this.
We have a very strange situation with the Bulls and the Stormers on top, and Leinster. If it's not on the bottom, Leinster's close to the bottom. So we'll see that get reversed, I'm sure. But let's enjoy it while we have it.
The Leinster social media channels are not going, let's invert the table.
Right. Less than everything. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, cheers, man. We did it.
Then is another great episode. Our sincere thanks to Geoff for joining us. Tell us what you think by following Harry and I on the socials in our spots. Find the 8-9 combo on the socials as well. Have your say here on the 8-9 YouTube channel. You can have your say on Spotify and maybe some of the other pod platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you wherever you are. We're going to have a little break now. We're going to enjoy this little window of opportunity for the next few weeks. The McKays are heading to Japan for a holiday, which will be great. So the next time, mate, we actually speak, we'll be following the Japan Wallabies test in Tokyo. So enjoy your sleep-ins.
Oh, nice. I'm trying to find you tickets for that too. Yeah, thanks for saying that. Remind me.
Great. If you wouldn't mind.
Right.
But make sure you are subscribed to the pod on the YouTube channel, particularly because we've got a couple of recaps of a couple of our favorite episodes through actually the Rugby Championship coming out in the next 2 weeks. So make sure you're all over that. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears soon.
Come play with us.
Here goes Jones with another bruising run. He links up with McKay, who pops back to Jones. They can't. They won't. They will. What a try. The Dream Team combo go in again.